I'm not normally a nervous speaker. I'd like to think I'm okay at it. And then Daniel kicked some ass this morning, and all of a sudden I'm nervous. You did an amazing job this morning, and I know your dad was incredibly proud of you. I was incredibly proud of you. So, I mean, what we want to do here today is we want to celebrate Dan's life. And this is the turning point where we go from being sad to celebrating one of the greatest people I've ever known. I don't know about you guys, I had myself a really good cry all the way here from the cemetery. And I got it all out. And ever since I got here, I've been telling stories about how amazing he was and about how wonderful he was. And he wasn't just my friend, he was my brother. And he was. And this is the point where we turn from sadness to celebration, that we had somebody so unbelievably special in our lives. I spent a lot of time talking to Danny. One of the things I was just talking to his parents about earlier, he's the only one of my friends that I still talk to on the phone all the time. Because, and now Mr. Chaplick, after seeing your flip phone, I know why this was the case. He was the most technologically challenged friend that I had. So we didn't communicate on social media, we didn't communicate on any way, but I had to like carve out time to be on the phone with the dude. And it was one of the most special things ever, because even though it was hard to find the time, I was friends with him on a deeper level than with all these other people that are incredibly close to me, because even though I know what's happening in everybody's lives, I could hear it in Dan's voice. And we had this thing on every Sunday. I would go play basketball every Saturday and Sunday. And on Sunday, on my way home from basketball, I would get on the phone with Danny. There'd be tons of traffic. It would take me 45 minutes to get home, and I would spend 45 minutes on the phone with him every single week. And at the end, I'd say, Jesus, Danny, will you get on Facebook so I can, like, you know, like, put the top down or something? And I'm glad he never did, because we were able to talk. And one of the things that he always talked about was his kids. He loved you guys. He loved you guys. And I went to dinner with you 6 years ago. You were on the boat 8 years ago. I feel like I know every minute of everything that you have ever done, because he wouldn't shut up. So that's kind of where we're going to start. I've been friends with Danny for almost 40 years. We were high school buddies, we were ski buddies, we were college roommates, we were best men at each other's weddings. We've had lots of sailing trips and Destin trips and Cayman trips along the way. And he's become part of every family and friend group that I'm part of. I have been blessed with 6 great groups of friends. Each one of these groups of friends, if any one of you has one group of friends like these 6 groups that I have, you should be lucky. I'm incredibly lucky. The connecting point is that Danny was part of all 6. And he's the only one in my life that was part of all 6. I've got St. John's Prep friends. Danny's the guy there. I've got Gloucester friends. He forced you to buy a house in Gloucester so we could be part of the Gloucester friends. And there was a few Gloucester girls he wanted to hang out with too. But you know, I'd like to think it was me. I've got a group of Attitash friends. Danny had a room in our ski house. He got a job at Attitash. They'd be like, you have your own ski house up here? He's like, no, I just got a job. And we're going to tell some stories about that in just a little bit. In college, I had a great group of college friends. Danny did a semester in industry. He moved to Syracuse for a semester to work at Carrier Corporation. He moved in with me and my buddies, and then he got a summer job there too. And I'm going to tell, well, I can't tell most of those stories. We're going to get there in a minute.
PG.
A little long.
And then there's my Destin family and friends, and my Cayman family and friends. And Danny spent enough time with us that he became part of them. There is, I got no fewer than 20 requests. Are you live streaming the funeral? I can't get on a plane, but I'd like to be part of it. I'd like to be there. He's touched everybody. He's just touched everybody. We did a little scholarship fund as part. I'm happy to announce that as of 10 minutes ago, we were over $5,000 on the scholarship fund in Danny's name, which is great. That's something that's going to help this whole thing, kind of keep going. Trying to stay with my notes without specifically reading. So 39 years ago next month, Danny and I met on day one of St. John's Prep freshman year. I met him at lunch. We ended up with an amazing group of friends that included Brooks Bullia, who was here from Gloucester, Chris Poor, who was here last night and also in the church today, Brian Murphy, Tim Higgins, and a whole bunch of other guys. And we had lunch together every day for 4 years. Danny's big grin and always positive personality, sometimes positively goofy, but always positive, they were infectious from the jump. And he made everybody's day better every single time he'd be with us. So one of the funny stories I have from when we would have lunch together, Danny liked to tell stories. And he would often tell stories that were not appropriate for a Catholic school lunch. And we had roving brothers that would walk around by each table and stand behind people, and Danny never knew when the brothers were behind him. So one day, after already being caught 4 or 5 times telling things he shouldn't be telling, he's telling his worst story ever. And Brooks and me are on one side of the table, Danny's on the other, and Brother Ron walks up and stands right behind Dan. And Brooks just keeps egging him on. And Danny's getting deeper into the story. He's getting deeper into the story. And all of a sudden, we're dying laughing, and Danny goes, with that big grin of his, and he goes, Brother Ron's right behind me, isn't he? And Danny was such an amazing guy. Brother Ron's like, I'm going to give you a pass on that one. They go what you doing. When news came out last week, and I put something on my Facebook, one of the first people to jump in and comment was Brother Ron, and he remembered that story.
Wow.
That's touching people. That is absolutely touching people. Danny was a skinny, short freshman. How he made the soccer and lacrosse and ski teams as a freshman, I don't know, because he was skinny, and he was short, and he was scrawny. We didn't see him the summer between freshman year and sophomore year because we didn't have cars yet. He didn't have the summer house in Gloucester yet. He's up in Topsfield. He came back for sophomore year, and he was a goddamn monster. He's huge, he's ripped, he's cut. He went from being the guy that was like, can I come with you guys? To being like, shit, Danny, the girls aren't gonna look at us if you don't come. Get over here. It was this amazing transformation. It was like a Disney movie. And interestingly enough, I realized this yesterday. Gail says to me halfway through the day, she says, Steve, you seem taller. I said, I think I've actually shrunk an inch in the last 5 years. I run it as I'm helping her parents in the car. Mrs. Chaplick goes, Steve, you seem taller than ever before. I'm like, the only place I've grown is not up. And then I realized they have never seen me unless I was standing next to Danny. And I was always short compared to Danny after freshman year. See if I can kind of look at this. Anyway, he became the strongest and best looking of our bunch. He ended up a key part of our soccer and lacrosse programs at school. He was 4-year varsity, 2-year captain, 4-year state champ, MVP, and 2-time junior Olympian in our ski team. And he was a great skier. Yeah. I was a ski instructor for 8 years. And one day Danny goes, Jesus, Steve, it's embarrassing that you wear the coat. Can I show you how to like really carve an edge? Along the way, he convinced his parents to buy that summer house in Gloucester. And he became part of our Gloucester crew and our Gloucester family, which is just absolutely amazing. And we had a lot of great times up here. He was a bartender up at Eastern Point Yacht Club. Legendary stories came out of there. A couple of my really close friends got married up there. I officiated a wedding up there. I'm hanging out and I'm like, yeah, you know, my buddy Danny Chaplick used to bartend here. They're like, Danny Chaplick's your buddy? I'm like, that was 30 years ago. He was always at our house. He became a fixture at our house in Magnolia. He was always there. Sometimes he was there when I wasn't there. And then he started coming into Hampshire with us in the summer, in the winters. And as I mentioned, he got a job at Attitash, and I'm like, Danny, where are you going to stay? He's like, with you. So we gave Danny his own room. He had a bed up in the loft. Now, there were only a couple of bathrooms in the house. And we eventually would get to the point where we had 4 girls in the house. They would use one bathroom, and Danny would use another bathroom. The 4 girls were ready before Danny was. If a fuse was blown, it was usually Danny's fault. The smell of Jacquard Noir was always wafting out of the bathroom. You know, I'm getting ready in the half bath downstairs in the sink. I'm like, yeah, there's one room for the guys, but Danny's in it. I can't do it. When he was ski team at St. John's, my sister tells this great story. So my sister and Gail, who are basically the exact same person, except she's my younger sister and Gail's Danny's older sister. She's 2 years younger. She's on the Bishop Fenwick ski team. And Danny would always come up to her, because they always had joint practices at Bradford. And he'd walk up and he'd be like, Erin, give me a hug. And all the girls on the Fenwick team were like, you know Danny. Danny hugs you every day? And she's like, yeah, we're real close. And all of a sudden, she tells the story. She's like, he would always come up to me and be like, okay, before I go over to these other girls, do I smell? And she's like, I just ran with it. It was fine. It was good. It was everything I wanted it to be. We basically, back in high school, we lived a 1980s movie.
Yes.
Any movie that you see about 80s high school stuff, we lived it. And if you saw an 80s ski movie, we really lived that one.
Hot dog.
We had an absolute blast. We also did a few proms and semi-formals together. One of my favorite stories is about that. Poor Danny. Me and Brooks were going with a couple girls from Gloucester. He was going to take a girl from Gloucester. And he's like, can I ride with one of you guys? And we're like, sure, ride with Brooks. So Brooks had a Mercedes, I had a Volvo, and Volvos were cool in the 80s for those of you who were born later. And Brooks and I went to get the cars washed, and Danny was going to meet us up at my house, and we were going to pick the girls up, and we were going to go. Brooks and I raced home from the car wash. I won the race. Brooks likes to remind me that he was winning right before he ran the Mercedes into a tree. But regardless, Danny shows up and we're like, hey man, you're gonna have to drive because, you know, we matched up the Mercedes. Brooks is gonna come with me and you're gonna drive the Dodge Aries K. So Danny showed up all suited up. He's ready to go. He's in his tux. I'm finishing getting ready. I come out. Danny's got the entire tux off. He's got shorts on. He's cleaning the hell out of the car. I go, Danny, what are you doing? He goes, I'm trying to make this look like a Mercedes. In college, I visited Dan a few times. Dan visited me a few times, and then he did that semester an internship at Carrier that I talked about, which was an incredibly coveted internship that everybody tried for, but he got. And I was like, dude, I live in a house with 7 guys. You've met him on these trips. Come live with us. So he lived with us for a semester, and then Carrier gave him a summer job also, and we just had a blast. We had a blast. I can't tell you most of those stories, not here. But if you check in with me later, I can fill you in. However, we did end up on the front page of the local Syracuse paper. They had this party that they would have every Wednesday called Party in the Plaza. They'd have live bands. Everyone would get out of work and go do this stuff. And it was kind of known as a place where people could meet other people. So the Syracuse Post-Standard comes down and they decide to interview a couple of enterprising young men that are attending the party, and they pick Danny and I. So they go up to Dan and they say, so if you're trying to meet somebody here, what line do you use? And he goes, nice shoes, want a drink? And it ended up being the headline of the article. We did a Cornell trip that was great. Two of our buddies from St. John's were at Cornell. We went down to visit them for a weekend. UB40 was playing. It was just
in college? Wow.
Yeah. Oh, we had a blast.
We never had that.
Yeah, we had a blast. So just all kinds of little things that we did, and then Danny hung out for the summer, and we had a blast all summer long. And one of the things we did. Now, Danny was my first volleyball partner. We played beach volleyball here on Good Harbor. We won a lot of matches. We actually thought we were pretty good. And to be clear, Danny was way better than I was. If he had a better partner, he might have even been able to go further. But then we got a little ahead of ourselves. And a pro tour came to one of the lake beaches outside of Syracuse. And we signed up. And we learned very quickly that we were not at that level. So I think we had a 9 a.m. match on Saturday. I think we were out by 9:02. But we got all the swag, and we spent the rest of the weekend on the beach going, yeah, we're in the tournament. Our times at SU or up in Syracuse were so epic, and he was incredibly proud, Daniel, when you got into Syracuse, and I know one of the things that he talked to me a lot about is that he hoped that you had the kind of times up there that we had up there, and I know that you have. And that made him incredibly, incredibly happy. Later in life, he started spending time with us down in the Caymans and in Destin. He'd come down to Destin and he'd do things with us and with my daughter. And my daughter's into dance, and my daughter is about Olivia's age. And that would just, anything she did would just prompt him to gush over everything that you do. So it was just this really wonderful connection that, we had this shared experience that after everything that we'd been through as friends, as brothers, that all of a sudden we had girls about the same age that were into the same things, and it allowed us to bond on even a deeper level, which I really kind of loved. And then he started coming to the Caymans with us. And we have a group of 40 families that spend every Christmas and New Year's week together down in the Caymans, and we've done it for 25 years. Within about 4 seconds of Danny showing up, it's like he'd been there for 25 years. Everybody loved him, he loved everybody. And one of my favorite pictures of him that's up in the slideshow that's been playing is him with a windsurfer coming out of the water with that big grin on his face. And windsurfing, if you don't know, it was a passion of his in his late teens and his early 20s, and he was really, really good at it. And just to see him back in the water on the windsurfer with that grin on his face, it was great. And he became part of that Cayman family and stayed part of that Cayman family. There are literally karaoke songs that have been rewritten because Dan was there. And I'll tell you those stories later too, but not with a microphone. One of our favorite things was to hang out with him on the boat in the summer in Gloucester. And one of my favorite photos from that time is the first time, Aiden, you were on the boat, and he's got he's got you in his arms up on the front of the boat, and it just, it's just who he was. It's just who he was. When we got on the boat, and for those of you that really know Danny, you'll figure this out, he asked my wife on the first trip, he said, with all this salt air, you're on the boat for a month, how do you manage to keep your hair looking like it does? And my wife just thought he was being polite. And a few years later, she's like, he really wants my hair care secrets. Overall, Danny was a 3-sport athlete. He was a 4-time state champ. He was an MVP. He was a ski instructor. He was a bartender. He was a businessman. He was a team leader. And he was a really great and fun guy. But most importantly to him, he was a father. He was a friend. He was a son. He was a brother, and he was a family man. He was like a son to my parents, an uncle to my daughter, a brother to me, my wife, and my sister, and I, like all of you, loved him very, very much. Here's to Danny.